across the spectrum, commercial real estate in particular has long been comfortable with throwing people at whatever the problem is, um, and doing things by brute force. Um, so I think that we're going to see a huge shift in how and where people spend time in the industry, I mean, writ large. I think if we were having this conversation in 5 years, Adam, we're going to find out that there's been a big shift in the way human capital is invested in our industry, what it's doing, and what information is available.
Hi, I'm Adam Gower, founder of GowerCrowd.com, where we help real estate syndicators find more investors. Welcome to the Easy Win AI Real Estate Show, exploring AI's impact on the real estate industry. Each episode offers practical tools, competitive AI strategies, and expert insights. For essential news and updates, visit easywin.ai and sign up for our free newsletter with actionable how-tos like how I added hours to my day by creating this clone of me you're watching and listening to right now. easywin.ai, the only newsletter you need on real estate and AI. All right, now over to the real me. Actually, can you tell the difference at the end of the day? Maybe a little bit more intonation. It's really difficult. I can barely tell the difference between the avatar of me and the real me. But anyway, this week's episode is with John D'Angelo, who is managing director at Deloitte. I heard him on a podcast, and he was talking about the intersection of AI and commercial real estate. So what you're going to be hearing from John today are some very deep insights into what some of the biggest companies in the world, commercial real estate, investment companies are doing in the world, funds and etc. With AI. It is extraordinary. I mean, you can see through what John is saying where the future is going. Oh, by the way, here's one serious observation. We talk about the world being completely different in 5 years, right? Imagine that, 5 years. That's the length of a short-term hold on a real estate deal. So you are in the right place today to be listening to John talking about what's going on with AI in the world of commercial real estate. He is a wealth of knowledge and insights, including some tools that you can actually use. That's so important. You can not only learn about the big picture from these episodes, at least that's my goal, but also get some easy wins each time, something you can actually use immediately after listening to the show, watching the show, listening to the podcast. All right, enough. John D'Angelo, Managing Director at Deloitte. There he is. John, what a nice pleasure to meet you. Thanks so much for joining me on the show today. Let's start with this question. You told me before we started, you are fascinated by, I want to paraphrase, the way that changing the way that AI is changing the way people do work on what was previously laborious and inefficient processes to become a lot more practical. Of course, we're focused entirely on commercial real estate. That is your area of expertise there at Deloitte. But talk to me about that interest that you have in commercial real estate world.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, Adam. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm particularly interested just in the heading of being a student of commercial real estate for the last 3+ decades, about the way work happens and the way people think about opportunities, risks, and where we could go in a portfolio. I think AI, so if you think about predictive analytics, and the whole spectrum of AI, not just, generative AI, which has captured a lot of attention over the last year and a half. I see things that were previously, either impractical or so laborious that you just didn't do them very often, like portfolio analytics, becoming kind of much more possible and much more rich. So, whereas for a long time, portfolio managers or asset managers in sort of big portfolios would, sort of do a very limited set of portfolio planning, just because the underlying data was sitting in spreadsheets, and you need to sort of think about, is it right, and what do I have? Um, and then the actual portfolio level planning, if you start sort of bottoms up from leases and tenants and markets, very quickly you get to a very complicated problem if the data is suspect and you're living in spreadsheets. Um, but imagine a world where, sort of the limitations of data, and we should probably talk a little bit about, how important data is at some level. But so
Absolutely.
but take away the limitations of an available data set, and layer upon that, tools that are much more intuitive, and think about the questions that you would ask if it was relatively easy to get the answer, and you start to get to a place where you can ask more questions, you can ask more nuanced questions, you can look at a range of possibilities, as opposed to sort of just, like baseline pessimistic, optimistic. And I think that sort of touches on, just let your mind wander, right, about the kinds of questions you could ask of these complicated assets and complicated portfolios, and
Well, so hang
the
on. So
kinds of,
wonder a minute.
yeah, yeah.
Wonder. What kind of questions can you ask? Let's hypothesize that just briefly. And then I do want to kind of back into some other kind of higher level questions. But what kinds of things could you ask potentially?
Yeah, so think about what if a particular job um, gets created in a geography. What's that do to demand across my portfolio? So let's just think a minute for, like think an Odyssey index, large portfolio, 1,000 different assets in multiple different sectors. Um, what's the primary effect of my real estate, and what's the ripple effect of the other kinds of real estate that surround the properties I have? So like what's it do to potentially to the values of what I'm holding today, um, and the markets that I'm in, and the places that I'm not in. So not just the office building, but the associated retail around that office building, and the associated multifamily around that marketplace. What should I be thinking about?
That's absolutely fascinating idea. I mean, like you say, the mind, you talk about it wandering. I think of it boggling. Actually, the mind boggles when you think about it. But let's just back up a little bit and
Yeah.
dial in on exactly what we're talking about, and we'll come back into it. So you just described a portfolio with 1,000 assets. So this might be, for example, and forgive me, I shouldn't even confess to not knowing something, but there are things I don't know. It is remarkable to realize that. But Odyssey, I think you said. So was that, are they a REIT? What is that? I mean, it sounds like a REIT kind of thing, that kind of scale of analytics. So answer me that also, but in the context of what kind of size of portfolio are you talking about on the lower end?
Yeah, and sorry, I spit out acronyms like it's common knowledge. So and I'm going to screw this up, but it's open-ended, sort of core funds. So the large, sort of think, the PGIMs of the world, or JP Morgans.
Okay.
I'll have kind of Odyssey index funds where they've been open end for a long time, and their primary mission is a relatively stable return from core properties, and I can I've got some liquidity in getting in and out, but
Uh,
they're constantly thinking about what do I hold, what do I buy, what's my exit strategy,
And at the
how do I
moment
time
that
that
is
correctly?
managed, so let's just picture up then. So, and my world is amongst the mortals of the private equity world, which are the guys that have up to maybe I don't know billion or so of assets under management. So relatively smaller shops. But so what does it look like inside JP Morgan or one of these huge institutional investors. It's a team of analysts who are pouring through the data, and it is on Excel spreadsheets. And the idea is, and so somehow you have to consolidate that intelligence across a whole range of people, presumably with really complicated communication systems. I don't know what type of, how do they communicate? How does that information filter up to the top? And the idea is, and let's get into data, that if you could, and not if, but as you become increasingly able to consolidate that data, now investment managers, fund managers can, and we'll use this term carefully, chat with the data to find out more about it. Just talk about that idea and what's going on and what are the data limitations you mentioned?
Yeah, so that it's interesting, Adam, at least in my mind's eye, there is no there's no Bloomberg for commercial real estate, right? It is it's private, it's opaque. As an owner, investor, operator, understanding leases and tenants and expenses, at the individual building level, and what's that look like over time. The data is, for lack of a better way to put it, messy. There's it's not like there's common industry definitions for how do you name a tenant. So every company's got to sort of deal with that on its own, and understand that the limited is the same as limited ink. So just start with sort of the granular complexity of the data itself. It's sort of an interesting, perfect is maybe the wrong way to put it, but application of AI. So or generative AI in particular, right? Helping to use the systems to sort through a big data set and ask if, well, gee, I think these 5 names that are all a little bit different and the punctuation's all a little bit different, I think they all mean the same thing. So it's a first application of generative AI is not having to teach the machine in machine learning senses that all those 5 things are the same. But generative AI is really good at I think these 5 things that are all a little bit different, I think they're the same thing. Is that correct? And being able to quickly respond to, yes, that's correct. So just taking all this messy granular data and making sense of it in the first place is a good application. And then once you've made sense of it, it's well, what's it all mean? And the what's it all mean is, if I'm, and you're right, there's sort of in the big world, there's analysts and there's asset managers and there's portfolio managers and there's investment professionals. But at the end of the day, they're all making decisions about, what should I be investing in? How long should I be holding it? Where do I have risks that I need to pay attention to? What assets are telling me that there's an opportunity here to, change the return profile? And what actions do I need to take? So, sorry, I'm speaking in paragraphs here. I'll give you an opening in a second.
No, it's absolutely fascinating. I mean, I'm just totally fascinated by how this works. What kind of size of company do you think? I mean, what you're describing again does sound like really major institutional scale type analytics. But when you get down to, like I say, the mere mortals, the smaller scale, so 100 million of assets under management to 1 billion, call it. Where can it be? Where are you seeing it be applied? Actually, are you seeing it? I'm not sure exactly what you do at Deloitte and who your clients are, but where are you seeing it being applied and how is it being applied today, do you think?
No, it's a really good question, Adam. In the world of commercial real estate, I think we are today living more in the art of the possible than we are in seeing sort of proven, mature solutions. There's a bit of listen, across Deloitte's, the great part about being inside of Deloitte is, I've got 100,000 some odd colleagues in the US that address all industries. So we get to sort of see generative AI and AI applications across industries. And there is this interesting trend that's coming of people. So just in case people listening are thinking, "Well, I'm behind." You're not behind. We're sort of seeing, in the generative AI landscape, early initiatives, and it tends to be about personal productivity. Um, take the transcript of this recording and put it through a Gen AI engine and ask for an executive summary of the conversation, and that happens very quickly. So like that basic use case we're seeing pop up in a ton of industries and a ton of companies across the size spectrum. So not just the very large companies. Um, the real estate use cases, multifamily in particular is an early adopter because there's so much resident interaction. So just automating that through chatbots, right? I've got a problem with my unit. It needs attention. Sort of asking for that and having an interaction about what's the problem and how big is it and is it urgent? Potential resident engagement. So the I'm interested in a unit. I can have a very natural experience with the chatbot. That's happening. But and we're seeing things pop up in particular the lease. It's such a document intensive industry. So leases, amendments, debt instruments, and all the rich information that tends to be locked away in those documents. So getting that abstracted out in a much more rich way, and then being able to ask questions of that data and stuff that was just locked away in lease language that historically I would need an attorney or a paralegal to pull it up and to read through it. Now having chatbots accessing the language, like I'm interested in what terms have I agreed to with X client in X geography. Is something I can, if assuming that all of this has been abstracted and the lease is accessible to the chatbot. I can get to a lot of kind of rich sort of Q&A in the actual document itself.
So I don't know if you know this, and so forgive me for asking if you don't. It's totally fine if I'm still, just kind of wheeling and kind of whatever through this. But I wanted to attempt to make a joke, and that is that if LLMs and AI replace lawyers, will they replace lawyer jokes? Like, how's that going to work exactly? We won't be able to have anybody to poke fun at anymore. And the one
we'll find somebody else.
What's that? We'll find somebody else. Exactly. There's always somebody to laugh at. There's got to be somebody, right? I mean, you got to laugh, right? And the other thing actually is the small note, little self-plug, I think, but quite seriously, you mentioned, don't worry, you're not behind. You're not behind because you're listening to this podcast. That's why you're not behind, candidly. And learning from guys like John D'Angelo, what's going on in the world, and from people at Deloitte and elsewhere. That really is a competitive edge. So plug over. Couple of actual practical questions. This is what I was going to say. Do you know actually? So I like talking about hypotheticals. I like talking about big picture, but the whole essence of this series and the newsletter and everything we're doing is easy wins, like practical, actual, here, do this now, solutions to stuff, right? And we've talked about some very big picture, mind-wandering stuff, but you talked about tenant communications and chatbots. At the sharp edge of that, how are people finding and implementing those solutions? Are you aware of it? Do you know how they're like? What are the company like? How are they find that? What is the process for actually pulling that in together?
Yeah, and listen, this is a case where we don't have a laundry list of vendors to go to, but But if you literally, if the listeners are in multifamily and thinking, well, gee, I would love to change the way, our resident managers spend their time. Um, Literally do a search on multifamily resident uh, service or chatbot applications, and you'll now come up with a crop. Um, it's interesting. Sorry, I keep using the word, Adam, but this is all very interesting to me.
Mm.
How quickly sort of new products and solutions are cropping up. And I think, frankly, that's going to be, particularly for companies that are, kind of small and mid-size. The route to, applications of AI and Gen AI is going to be inside of products. It'll be inside of applications. It'll be inside of products. So you don't need to understand all of the architecture. You don't even need to really understand, kind of at the core. Well, you probably should understand what's happening, but it can be in theory. It doesn't have to be
I
in the
don't know.
nuts and
I just
bolts.
because I have to beg to differ a little bit. And the reason I say that is I remember I'm a marketer. I love marketing. And there's
Yeah.
this great example of I must have read years and years ago, it's stuck in my mind, because my father used to mow the lawn. We used to have this lovely green lawn, of grass in northern England. So it was very green. And every weekend he would get out his lawnmower and he'd pull a thing, and it was gas powered. And he would mow these perfectly straight lines, right? That you would see in the grass. I don't know. We're in California. We don't have stuff like that these days, but that's what he did. And the idea was that you don't try and sell the lawnmower on the basis of how many rotors it's got and the horsepower and the speed of the rotations per minute or anything. You sell it on the basis of wouldn't you like to have a lawn like this? That's all you care about is how's this going to benefit? I don't care how it works. It's how it's going to benefit. Why do you think people need to know what's under the hood?
Well, no, I think that's exactly it. Yeah. Well, unless your point was that you should know, the rotors and no, exactly. You care about having a lawn like that.
Right. And
And yeah. But so I guess that's my point is I think it is good to know kind of the very broad strokes about what the technology is doing. You don't need to know the details about, what the technology is doing, as long as you trust that what it's doing is appropriate, that it's getting to the right outcome, that it's not going to do something that pisses off your resident while it's chatting with your resident.
right.
Um, so I mean, there's a little bit of understanding
Hmm.
the broad strokes of the mechanics, but that's kind of my point. Is I think that as we start to see products and solutions emerge with the AI embedded in those products, um, that's the avenue for most companies to AI adoption.
And the shortcuts to AI adoption today, rather than the huge uh, um, examples that you gave at some of these funds, etc., are productivity tools. Are there any that like any that you use that habitually or have come to like, and how do you use them, or how is that? How is AI usage encouraged at Deloitte, if it is at all? I mean, just like what's the environment over there like?
Yeah, yeah. Listen, I think we are in relatively early days. If I think about what's happening here, we're making investments that are denominated in billions in our own toolkits. Partly personal productivity, so partly kind of the mundane of capturing notes from conversations that are increasingly online. And what do we decide on, and kind of what were the major actions coming out of the meeting, to embedding it inside of our own audit tools. Um, so, sort of thinking about what do you, yeah, and this is, I get quickly over my skis, Adam,
Yeah, no,
but,
it's fine.
my audit brethren, about, what do they look at? And how do they sample things, and what do they sample? Um, so, helping target the work that people do. Um, I think that's particularly interesting. We're making big investments in document abstraction tools. So, think of an individual company is not likely to be working on its own lease abstraction tool, but being able to use what we've already developed with language models that are already there. Um,
It's fascinating that you should say that. I've started, I'm just obsessed with this, John. I mean, I just find it absolutely fascinating. And I'm just trying to find quick wins. I mean, what I call easy wins. And I heard that document extraction was possible. So I figured, I'll give it a shot. And I uploaded some leases to various of the LLMs, wrote a prompt, engineered a prompt actually. Just shows how much I know. I know about engineering prompts, right? I'm like already genius level here. And the results that came out were mind blowing. Like I couldn't believe how quickly, like huge documents, offering doc, 100-page, 80,000 word offering documents in nanoseconds. I've got a really concise, accurate summary. It's mind blowing.
yeah,
How quick.
amazing, right, Adam? I think that is the if anybody listening to this takes one thing away, I would say experiment. Um, go understand what's possible. Do it in a safe way, right? The part of what we're trying to get ahead of is also helping our clients, put out policies and communications about, exposing sensitive information to, well, just understanding kind of the way this works.
Mm.
But you don't have to put out, big sensitive information to understand, what the available tools and technologies do. Um, so that whole thing about intellectual curiosity and the experience that you had, that I'm guessing you don't come from a technical background. It is accessible. It's democratized. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And that's actually, again, that's exactly what I'm trying to do is to play around, figure something out that's fun. Ask guys like you, okay, like what have you discovered that's kind of fun? And then sharing it. It's like, here,
Yeah.
try this, right? Have a go and try this. It's really cool. Um, Backing up a couple. So this is a very important point that you brought up, kind of tangentially, but it is important. It's this question of, I'm going to use these two terms, security and privacy, right? So what are the challenges with everything that we're talking, uploading this to there and running this test and etc. So what are the big questions and how are those being dealt with?
Well, so the big questions are when I upload my document or my company's document, what then happens to the data? So what rights am I giving away
Hmm.
to the data that I'm just uploading
Right.
in a publicly
When
available tool?
when you clicked I agree to get there,
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
click the I agree to everything about privacy and security, and now you're there. Mm.
And that's the place that listen, I think we're going to go through this period of understanding how to balance truly sensitive information with making things publicly available or disclosing things I didn't mean to disclose.
Mm.
So I would certainly pay attention to data rights and privacy rights as you're playing with tools. And listen, there's a Adam, the good news is it's sort of both good news and complicated news. There's lots of different architectures available for both large language models and where these things sit and how they're hosted. Um, so it's not like it just means I want to adopt this and it means I'm just letting go of private sensitive information. Um, so there's a bit of research to do just about kind of what you're exposing, and then as you start to think, and this is when it's in a tool or a solution that you're licensing, that's pretty clear. When you're thinking about and most, unless you're a very big company, you're probably not thinking about how do I how do I pull together different components, into a solution to protect my sensitive information. So um, it doesn't need to be that complicated. Um, but there's an awful lot out there just about the basic tools and componentry of in particular Gen AI solutions,
Mm.
that's worth just becoming familiar with.
John, let's wrap up with three questions. I got three like rapid fire questions I've got here.
Great.
And you're only the second person I'm actually going to test these on. So forgive me if they're like, oh my goodness, what is asking these daft questions about? So let's start with this one. What thoughts do you have about why real estate professionals should be paying attention to AI today?
Yeah. So across the spectrum, commercial real estate in particular has long been comfortable with throwing people at whatever the problem is, um, and doing things by brute force. Um, so I think that we're going to see a huge shift in how and where people spend time in the industry, I mean, writ large. I think if we were having this conversation in 5 years, Adam, we're going to find out that there's been a big shift in the way human capital is invested in our industry, what it's doing, and what information is available.
Yeah, 5 years. That's the life cycle of many deals. It's not that far away,
It's not very long.
actually. Second question. So, to what, how do you use AI personally? Like, do you have any daily use? Like, I want people to hear what you say and think, oh, that's a good idea. I'll try that.
So my thing is using and they're a client, so I'll be careful with the client names, but the kind of the personal productivity tools that are now embedded to help me with the general. Listen, I take great pride. I enjoy the act of writing. So I take great pride in what I write, but it's always that sort of fresh set of eyes. Is this making sense? So putting emails through something to check my grammar and readability, is just been this nice little, like, on a relatively constant basis, just look over my shoulder and check my work. Has been super valuable to me.
Funny you should say that. I've actually started to deliberately misspell things and use bad grammar so people know it is actually me that wrote it.
That's great.
It's like a little
Just throwing in
signature.
errors.
Something in there where there's an error. It must, oh, Gower actually wrote that. Of course, I didn't most of the time. I edited it and then put it in. But anyway, last question, if you don't mind. So you won't share the name of the client, but I obviously respect that, of course. But do you have any easy wins for listeners that they can do and test and try right now? Any suggestions like try this? I did it. It was really cool. Have a go.
Yeah, listen, if you need to do, God, listen, so ChatGPT is what we all know. If you've not played around with ChatGPT, you really should. I write a monthly column that's usually kind of your basic 5 paragraph essay, um, and I asked the tool to write me a 5 paragraph essay about Gen AI applications in real estate. And Adam, if I was less prideful about my work, I could have I could have made some tweaks to put it in my own voice and be done with it. So just that. My wife's a recruiter. She writes job descriptions all the time, or she used to write job descriptions all the time. Now she's generally in the mode of, like, put a job description together for me for a revenue recognition professional, and what she gets back is, again, right, you've got to read it, but it's in so many cases so much easier than drafting it.
This idea that you're not going to be replaced by AI, you're going to be replaced by somebody who uses AI. Right?
And I think that's really important, right? I think there is a long period that it is, machines and people working together. I think that's where we're going to be for that at least in the arc of my career. The great place is going to be help people spend more time doing what people are inherently good at. And that means the machines and people working together.
John D'Angelo, Managing Director, Deloitte, right? Do you have any more to your title? Real estate, commercial real estate, like?
I am the real estate solutions leader, Adam. Which it actually means something. It means that I'm in the market listening to clients and their challenges and making sure that we've got solutions that address our clients' needs.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honor having you join me today. Thanks so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, that was John D'Angelo of Deloitte. Thanks so much. Super pleasure meeting you. Thank you for joining me today. And understanding and hearing through the lens of your experience there, dealing with some of the biggest fund managers in the world. It's really, really incredible, but also really cool that you were able to share some insights into some easy wins for everybody, right? Some ways that you can just make just a little incremental step in your pathway to adopting technology, to adopting AI. It's changing the world. You got to stay on top of it, one step at a time. If you have not already subscribed to the easywin.ai newsletter, go there right now. easywin.ai, sign up to a newsletter that accompanies this series. You're going to get updates and how-tos and guides and all kinds of stuff. It's totally free. It is the way of the future. What we're talking about today is changing the world. It is so much fun to figure this stuff out, to learn about it. That's all I've got for you this week. Dear viewers, thank you also for joining us, of course. I really hope you're as blown away by this stuff as I am. I guess if you're listening all the way to the end, you must be as obsessed as I am. There's nothing more to come for this episode, but join me next time and we will cover the same topic, but in a totally different way. As fascinating. In our next episode, that's it for this time, though. Thank you again, John. Thank you for joining me, everybody. Until next time, Adam Gower, signing off.